Have you ever wondered why our earliest great civilizations all sprung up alongside mighty rivers? It's no coincidence. From the Nile in Egypt to the Tigris and Euphrates in Mesopotamia, the Indus in South Asia, and the Yellow River in China. These waterways were the lifeblood of humanity's first giant leap forward. Today, we're diving deep into the story of how these rivers didn't just carry water, but also carried our ancestors into a new era of history. Let's journey back in time. About 5,000 to 6,000 years ago, small groups of hunter-gatherers were starting to figure out something revolutionary. Farming. But farming needs two key things: fertile soil and a reliable source of water. And where did they find the perfect combination? You guessed it, in the floodplains of major rivers. Take the Nile, for instance. Every year, like clockwork, it would flood its banks, leaving behind a thick layer of incredibly rich black silt. The ancient Egyptians called this Kemet, the Black Land. This natural fertilizer made farming almost effortless. They could predict the floods, plant their crops like wheat and barley, and then harvest bountifully. This surplus of food was the single most important catalyst for change. When not everyone had to spend their day searching for food, people could start specializing. You could become a potter, a weaver, a priest, or a soldier. This surplus also meant populations could grow. Small villages swelled into bustling towns, and eventually into the world's first cities, like Memphis and Thebes in Egypt. The river wasn't just a source of water. It was the engine of their entire economy. It was their highway for trade and transport, connecting different parts of the kingdom and allowing for the movement of goods, people, and ideas. A similar story unfolded thousands of miles away in Mesopotamia, the land between the rivers Tigris and Euphrates. Unlike the predictable Nile, these rivers were wild and unpredictable. Their floods could be devastating. This forced the Mesopotamians, like the Sumerians, to become master engineers. They developed complex irrigation systems, canals, dikes, and reservoirs to control the water. This monumental effort required organization, cooperation, and leadership. And what does that lead to? Government to manage these massive public works projects, to distribute water fairly, and to store surplus grain. A central authority was needed. This gave rise to priests and kings who held immense power. They needed to keep track of all this grain, all these laborers, and all these water rights. How did they do it? They invented writing. The Sumerians developed cuneiform, one of the earliest writing systems, initially just to keep records of their agricultural wealth. So, from the challenge of taming wild rivers came the birth of engineering, government, and writing. Let's travel east to the Indus Valley, in modern-day Pakistan and India. Here, the cities of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro flourished. What's incredible about them is their level of urban planning. They had grid-like street patterns, and most astonishingly, advanced sanitation systems with toilets and covered drains in many homes. This level of public health infrastructure was unheard of for its time and would not be seen again for thousands of years. It speaks volumes about a highly organized, centrally governed society that understood the importance of hygiene, made possible by the resources and challenges presented by the Indus River. And finally, we have the Yellow River in China, often called the cradle of Chinese civilization. But it also has another name, the River of Sorrow. Like the Tigris and Euphrates, its floods were powerful and destructive. Legend tells of a great Enki, Yu the Great, who spent years developing methods to control the floods. His success in taming the river established the legitimacy of China's first dynasty, the Xia. This narrative became a cornerstone of Chinese political philosophy. The ruler's job was to maintain harmony between heaven, earth, and humanity by controlling the natural world, especially the rivers. So we see a clear pattern. The rivers provided fertile land, leading to agricultural surplus. This surplus allowed for population growth and job specialization. The challenges of managing the water led to the development of government, engineering, and writing. But these rivers shaped more than just the practical aspects of life. They were at the very heart of their culture and beliefs. The river was a god. It was a source of life and a force of destruction. For the Egyptians, the Nile's predictable cycle mirrored their beliefs about life, death, and rebirth. Their entire cosmology was built around it. The gods were intertwined with the river, and the pharaoh's primary duty was to ensure the floods came on time, maintaining cosmic order, or Mat. In Mesopotamia, the chaotic nature of their rivers was reflected in their gods, who were often seen as unpredictable and demanding. Humans were created, in Terbiu, simply to serve these powerful deities, and hopefully appease them enough to prevent a catastrophic flood or drought. Their epic tales, like the Epic of Gilgamesh, even include a massive, world-altering flood story, likely inspired by the very real floods they experienced. The culture that developed along these rivers was rich and complex. They built incredible monuments that still owe us today. Think of the pyramids of Giza, built on the edge of the Nile Valley, using the river to transport the massive stone blocks. Think of the ziggurats of Mesopotamia, massive temple towers, built to reach towards the heavens, from which priests would observe the stars and, importantly, the rivers. They developed astronomy to predict seasons and floods. They developed mathematics to survey land after a flood washed away boundary markers and to design their grand construction projects. The Egyptians developed a 365-day calendar based on the Nile's cycles. Law codes, like the famous Code of Hammurabi from Babylon, were created to regulate a complex society living in close quarters, dealing with issues like property rights and water distribution. All of these foundational elements of civilizational laws, our science, our writing, our beliefs have deep roots in the mud and silt of these ancient riverbanks. Humanity didn't just settle by the water. We were shaped by it. The river was a teacher, a provider, a god, and a challenge. By learning to live with these powerful forces of nature, our ancestors didn't just learn to farm. They learned how to build societies. So the next time you see a river, Takea Momen, remember that these flowing waters are what carried our species from small, scattered bands into the great, complex, and interconnected world we live in today. The story of civilization is, in many ways, the story of a river. Thanks for joining me on this journey through history. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into the past. See you next time.